The cold steel floor hummed beneath their feet as the prisoners were shoved into the holding cell. The aliens didn't bother with shackles. They saw no need. The humans had been captured so easily, so pathetically, that the guards were already laughing about it. The alien commander, a towering brute with chitinous plating and slit-pupil eyes, loomed over them. His mandibles clicked in amusement as he addressed the group. "Your people will pay dearly to have you returned. Surrender your fleet, and perhaps we will allow some of you to live." No one responded. Just wide eyes, tense shoulders. The kind of fear the aliens expected from weak, broken captives. The commander snorted. Weak prey. Not worth his time. He turned to his second-in-command. "Strip their ship for parts. Burn the rest." A human flinched. Not a large reaction, barely a twitch of the jaw, but enough for the aliens to smirk. Fear. Desperation. Good. They fed on that. The cell door slammed shut. Heavy footfalls faded down the corridor. The guards didn't bother leaving sentries behind. What could these pathetic creatures possibly do? A minute passed. Then another. One of the humans, a man dressed in the tattered remains of a trader's vest, exhaled. Slowly. Patiently. From the corner of the cell, a woman pushed her back against the wall, stretching her arms behind her like she was just getting comfortable. Her fingers brushed against the vent, feeling for the screws. Loose. Good. The trader, who wasn't a trader at all, glanced at the others. A mechanic, a diplomat, a doctor. Civilians, as far as the aliens knew. What they didn't know. They hadn't captured prisoners. They had locked themselves in with predators. The trader tapped a knuckle against the floor. The others stilled. Their gazes sharpened, the veneer of helplessness peeling away like a discarded mask. Morse code. A single message. Begin. The woman near the vent twisted her fingers. Metal groaned as the grate loosened. No one moved too fast. No sudden gestures. If the cell had cameras, they had to keep up the act. One of the men, the so-called diplomat, shifted to lean against the wall, scratching his arm absently. His fingers brushed the hem of his sleeve, tugging out a single, near-invisible thread. Carbon fiber wire. Strong enough to saw through bone. The mechanic ran his hands through his hair, fingers grazing the back of his ear where a tiny implant rested. Still functional. He could already hear the hum of the ship's internal systems. A few minor disruptions. Power fluctuations. Doors sticking. They hadn't done that before the humans arrived. He smiled to himself. Good. Outside the cell, two guards ambled past, deep in conversation. "They'll fetch a good price," one grunted. "Or bait. Maybe the humans will hand over one of their battleships to get these ones back." His partner snorted. "Doubtful. They're weak. Soft. All that talk of their victories? Luck. I've seen one bleed. They are fragile creatures." The first guard tapped the control panel lazily, barely glancing at the cell's status feed. "Still, Command thinks they're valuable. Something about their military being unpredictable. That's why they want them alive for now." The diplomat let out a soft chuckle. Too quiet for the guards to hear. Unpredictable. If only they knew. Another tap. The trader shifted slightly, brushing his fingers against the side of his boot. The tiny compartment was still there. Untouched. Idiots hadn't even searched them properly. Across the room, the woman at the vent gave a minuscule nod. The screws were out. The opening was there. A way out, if they wanted it. But escaping wasn't the plan. Not yet. The guards moved on. The hallway fell silent. Another tap. Another message. Wait. Watch. Let the aliens feel safe. Let them celebrate their easy victory. By the time they realized their mistake, it would be too late. The alien commander's mandibles clicked in irritation as he watched the holoscreen. His demands had been transmitted to the human fleet, yet no immediate response had come. That was unusual. Humans were known for their emotional attachments. Hostages should have sent them scrambling. Perhaps they are stalling. his second-in-command suggested. They wouldn't dare. The commander's claws tapped against the console. They know we do not bluff. Still, something gnawed at him. A vague unease. The humans had been too compliant. He had expected resistance, desperation. Instead, they had gone silent in their cell, like livestock awaiting slaughter. He dismissed the thought. It didn't matter. Their fate was sealed. In the holding cell, the traitor sat cross-legged, head bowed. To an untrained eye, he looked lost in thought. In truth, he was listening. The mechanic had murmured a few words earlier, seemingly to himself, but laced within the idle comment had been numbers. Coordinates. The ship's location within enemy-controlled space. A confirmation that they weren't near reinforcements. Good. That meant no interruptions. The diplomat pretended to examine his fingernails, but his eyes flicked to the ceiling. Every vent, every seam in the metal was being mapped. A silent strategy forming. The woman who had loosened the vent made her move first. Not a full escape. Just a test. She slid an arm inside, fingers brushing against an access panel. A twist. A flick. A single light on the far side of the room flickered. The mechanic smirked. The system was vulnerable. One of the guards walked past the cell again. This one was new. Less experienced. He barely glanced inside. Didn't bother to check the restraints. He moved on, unconcerned. The diplomat leaned against the wall, exhaling through his nose. Sloppy, he muttered. The traitor didn't respond, but his lips curled slightly. Sloppy meant predictable. Predictable meant exploitable. They had already gathered enough data to proceed. Guard rotations were erratic but followed a general pattern. The ship's internal network had minor security failsafes, but nothing they couldn't override. The biggest weakness, however, wasn't the ship. It was the aliens themselves. They were arrogant. Overconfident. And they had no idea what was coming. The woman at the vent made another adjustment. Somewhere in the ship, a minor alarm tripped, then silenced itself. Barely noticeable. But in the command room, it was enough to make the alien commander's claws twitch. Power fluctuation, a technician reported. Minor systems disturbance. The commander waved it off. Meaningless. Continue monitoring. The traitor glanced at his team. A tap on the floor. A message passed between them. Begin destabilization. Not escape. Not yet. First, they would make the ship turn against its own crew. The ship lurched. Not violently, not enough to trigger a full alert, but just enough to make the crew take notice. A power reroute here, a misfiring control panel there. The mechanic smirked. It had taken nothing more than a few careful disruptions, one subtle enough to pass as technical malfunctions. The aliens, so sure of their superiority, wouldn't suspect sabotage. Not yet. The traitor adjusted his posture, rolling his shoulders as if trying to ease tension. A silent signal. The diplomat cracked his knuckles, shifting position. The woman near the vent flexed her fingers, ready. A second lurch. This time, an alien technician's voice crackled over comms. Power drain in secondary thrusters. Possible systems lag. The commander's mandibles twitched. Investigate. I want full diagnostics. The lights dimmed, flickering just once. The mechanic hummed under his breath. Everything was progressing smoothly. The guards outside the cells shifted uneasily. One finally decided to check on the prisoners, stepping closer to the reinforced barrier. He peered inside, expecting to see the same defeated expressions. The traitor met his gaze. Calm. Steady. Too steady. The alien's instincts prickled, but before suspicion could take hold, the ship jolted again. Not an error this time. A real failure. The lights flickered in rapid succession. Warning sirens blared for half a second before cutting off. Control panels throughout the ship displayed errors, some systems reading as offline, others giving contradictory reports. The command room erupted in confusion. What is happening? The commander snarled. Unknown! We are losing partial control. The diplomat tilted his head, listening. The panic was setting in. Perfect. One of the guards outside cursed and turned toward a console, trying to manually override the sudden system failures. The second hesitated, debating whether to stay at his post. That moment of hesitation was all the humans needed. The vent panel in the cell shifted just enough for the woman to slip her fingers through. A tiny, precise flick of the wrist sent a hair-thin wire forward, silent, undetectable, until it looped around the standing guard's throat. The struggle was over in seconds. No scream. No warning. The second guard turned too late. The traitor moved before the alien could react, catching him in a vice grip. A muffled crack. The body slumped. The cell door remained closed, but that was a minor inconvenience. The mechanic had already bypassed the lock remotely. The diplomat exhaled slowly as the door slid open. No alarms triggered. The ship was already too confused by its own failing systems to realize what had just happened. They stepped into the corridor. This wasn't an escape. This was a takeover. The humans moved like ghosts through the dim corridors, each step calculated, each motion deliberate. The ship was in chaos. Alerts flickered inconsistently, status reports contradicted each other, and crew members barked confused orders over comms. The aliens had no idea what was happening. The traitor and the diplomat reached a control station first. A single guard stood at the panel, distracted by the erratic data feeds. He never saw the strike coming. A precise blow, a silent collapse. The mechanic stepped in, fingers flying across the console. Command access is layered, but their security's a joke, he murmured. Give me a minute. There was no need for brute force. The aliens had built their systems with the assumption that no human could ever reach these controls. That arrogance made them sloppy. A bypass here, a reroute there, sections of the ship started locking down. Hallways sealed, critical paths blocked. The crew was being funneled, herded into predictable routes. The commander snarled in frustration from the bridge. Why are we losing control of our own ship? Find the source! The second in command bared his fangs. The prisoners! Impossible. And yet, when the commander pulled up the cell feed, all he saw were two unmoving bodies on the floor. The humans were gone. Realization hit. The ship wasn't malfunctioning. It was under attack from within. The crew scrambled to respond, but the humans were already ahead of them. Every countermeasure was anticipated, every attempt to regain control blocked before it could take effect. The traitor tapped into the ship-wide comms. His voice carried through every corridor. Attention! Your vessel has been compromised. Surrender now, and you might live. Laughter rippled through the crew. Surrender? To weak, soft humans? Absurd. Then the ship's artificial gravity flickered. Then life support controls scrambled. Then emergency bulkheads slammed shut, cutting off key sections. The laughter died. Panic set in. The commander roared. They are few! Hunt them down! But the humans weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were hunting. A squad of alien warriors advanced through the corridors, weapons raised. Shadows shifted. A wire tightened. A pulse rifle went off, aimed at nothing. One by one they fell. By the time the humans reached the bridge, resistance had crumbled. The last remaining guards barely put up a fight before being taken down. The commander stood alone, rage and disbelief warring in his expression. This isn't possible. The diplomat stepped forward, unarmed, unthreatening. His words, however, carried weight. You never captured us, he said, voice calm. You invited us in. The commander lunged, claws bared. A single shot rang out. Silence. The humans took their seats at the controls, the traitor settling into the captain's chair. A new ship. A new mission. And one hell of a message for the rest of the galaxy.